this next series is about communication. A planner's job is to sell the project. It's to make this subdivision look special. And it's all about selling, because what happens is if there's no approval, there's no project. So they're telling either a story that's false, or what they're doing is they're just saying the numbers. An engineer will say, we have 3.5 units per acre per your minimum requirements. They have exactly 60 foot at the required, and people fall asleep. Or they're going to tell a story, and the story is going to be false, because that consultant is going to make money when that project moves forward. That's the way it works. So a good sales job means that consultant is probably going to make pretty good fees. So they got to convince the city. So what happens is, the reality is, it's more like packaging people in boxes. And when you look at the typical plan, and you're looking at it in a 2D world with pastel colors, it's a falsification typically of what the reality is. And that's over-embellishing the plan. With LandMentor, you have that easy 3D tool. And with that easy 3D tool, a bad plan's going to look bad, a good plan is going to look good. Simple as that. There's no lying. There's no falsification. So the planner's task is to convince the developer the plan is good, convince the city for approvals, and if the plan meets the minimum zoning, it's an easy task. If the plan reduces the minimums for a gain in density and profits for the developer, there are these little tricks up the planner's sleeves. And that's what's wrong with the planning industry. So what I did was I went to Google Images, I hit rendered site plans, and we got this as a result. I'm just taking the first things that show up. I'm going to demonstrate to you what embellishment does. So can you identify the tricks up the sleeves of this planner? Take a look. Well, pastel color buildings. It gives the impression of open space. Grass driveways. They kind of forgot to fill in not only driveways, but the sidewalks. Can you identify this trickery? Again, pastel color buildings. Tree stamps over paved areas. So the trees are primary, and you don't look so much at all the pavement. Shadows along the buildings and trees hide more potential paved spaces. So it draws your eyes away from things, and it looks greener than it is. Now, what about the trickery here? Pastel color buildings, that's requisite. Tree stamps, but look at the driveways. They're the width of a sidewalk. You can't get into a garage without driving over the lawn. So they intentionally made the driveways small. It is lying. That's what it's called. What about the trickery here? Pastel color buildings, tree stamps, but no paving for the walks, because that would make everything more concrete in the development that's already using concrete as planning features. And that's absurd. To build more paving intentionally can make the plan look good, and you'll just destroy the economics and the environment as this thing gets built, because you don't need all this pavement. And that's what LandMentor will teach you. Can you identify the trickery here? A little bit different. Not with the pastel color buildings, because that's kind of a law. You have to have that. Or the tree stamps. You got pastel colored paving. So it appears a lot more green than it is. So do you see a pattern here? Do you see a pattern? None of these proposals show what it will look like from the street. We live in an era where CAD, for well over 2 decades, advertisement said, here's the site plan in 3D. There are none. Because if this site plan was shown in 3D, you would see a row of garages. You would see a row of parked cars. You would see a sea of pavement. Milltown would look pretty cookie cutter, and people wouldn't approve it. In fact, the developer doesn't even know what this looks like, and the person designing it doesn't even know what this looks like from the ground. We're not birds. I wish I could fly, but I can't. I have no wings. I have legs. We have to plan from human scale, and we have to tell the truth. We have to tell it from human scale, because otherwise the planning industry is nothing but cheap advertising. What about fabrication of data? The planner indicated 900 lots on the site, and that was the basis of the land purchase offer. The problem was the lot width on the plans were false. There were no 900 lots on the site. The faking was for actual count to look good. That is very prevalent in the planning industry. But this was done by a civil engineer. Didn't realize a civil engineer would fake geometry data. But they did it so they look good. Look at the 900 lots I got. There's so many at this width and there's so many at that width. Well, it was a lie. So we tried to make the numbers work before we realized in $25,000 worth of hours that we did not charge, before we realized and checked the data, that they fabricated the data. But the problem is the developer bought the land and did all the numbers based on 900 lots. There were no 900 lots. And they lost a ton of money. So the planner looks good to the consultant as they bankrupt, potentially, the consultant. Because once you make an offer on a land, you're stuck with that. They can't go to the landowner and say, you know what, I'm sorry. I thought I had 900 lots, and that was the basis of my offer, so I only have 840 lots, so I got to offer you less. That doesn't work in the real world. So the planner's job is not to bankrupt the development and not to cause homeowners to have to pay 5 or 10 or 15% more every month for their payment. That's not the planner's job. But it will happen if you keep on using the systems that you're using and not adopting LandMentor. So the site plan, if you see here, has very little open space. Remember at the beginning, we taught you how to recognize waste? Take a look at this. There is an absurd amount of pavement that's not needed on this. So just take a look at things you would have done differently from these lessons. Now, you probably won't see that right away, but look at one-sided parking lots and look at all the paving serving one-side parking. In the same way, you only had lots fronting one street. This is about 30 to 40% more pavement than needs to be built. So no wonder there's no green space. But you can't recognize it unless you're trained. And LandMentor, you have to read all of the documentation and you will get trained. So the concluding thoughts is, this is 2017, it's not 1967, it's not 1917, it's not 1857. But we're doing things the same, but CAD has marketed 3D for decades, yet CAD is bad because it's difficult to do 3D. Planning must represent exactly what will be built. We're entering a new virtual age. You can't fake anything because you will destroy the economics of the city you work for or the developer you work for. The embellishment it hurts everybody. So all of these things we need to think differently. And LandMentor was designed for thinking differently. It's a technology that will free you from the shackles of CAD and GIS. So, what's the most important? Is it the developer or the city's desires? It's the residents. It's the residents. Because if you look at the residents first, you will be serving the developer and the city, and then creating something special moving forward and creating a career that's a lot more rewarding. And this is what LandMentor is about. So it's the power that it will provide for you to excel in this industry. So you've got a career that you're going to school for that will take you years to get through college. If you dedicate 1 week to learn the system and go through the documentation from beginning to end, and then take the training videos we'll provide to you to have accomplished that first, you will learn more in very little time than you will learn in your college degree for free. But you need to dedicate yourself to LandMentor, and we'll dedicate ourselves to you and invest in you, but you have to invest in us.